Hello, and welcome. As educators, we've all had students who seem very similar in ability, but when things get difficult, they respond in completely different ways. One student sees a mistake as a chance to learn, while another becomes frustrated and wants to give up. We've all experienced moments like these, and they remind us that motivation is about so much more than ability. Throughout this presentation, we'll look at 3 motivation theories and how they can help us better understand why students respond as they do. More importantly, we'll discuss how these theories can help us make intentional decisions that encourage students to stay engaged, build confidence, and keep trying even when learning is difficult. Motivation isn't something students either have or don't have. It's influenced by the relationships we build, the feedback we provide, the goals we set, and the classroom environment we create every day. As we share our experiences, we'll connect each theory to a real-world example and discuss practical ways to apply these ideas in the classroom. Our hope is that you'll leave with strategies you can use to better support and motivate the learners in your own classroom. Let's get started with our first motivation theory. Before learning about expectancy value theory, I viewed motivation as something that could be improved primarily through encouragement. However, I have come to understand that motivation is influenced by much more than that. Individuals are more likely to remain motivated when they believe they can succeed and recognize the value of the task. Developing a deeper understanding of this theory has changed the way I approach motivation and has influenced my future teaching practices. I want to introduce you to expectancy value theory, a motivation theory developed by Wigfield and Eccles. This theory explains that people are more likely to engage in a task when they believe they can be successful and when they see value in what they are doing. I'll demonstrate how this theory can help us better understand motivation. Expectancy value theory provides a useful framework for understanding motivation because it encourages us to ask 2 important questions. First, does the learner believe they can be successful? This is known as expectancy. Second, does the learner believe the task is valuable? This is known as value. Task value includes 4 components. Interest value, is the activity enjoyable? Utility value, will this help me in the future? Attainment value, is succeeding important to me? Cost, what am I giving up by doing this? I recently encountered this experience with my daughter. It taught me that before we try to motivate someone, we must first identify the source of the problem. In my case, the learner was my daughter. She had always enjoyed learning and willingly participated in educational activities. However, once summer break began, her enthusiasm disappeared. She preferred relaxing over reading, STEM activities, or other educational experiences. Like many parents and teachers, my first response was to encourage her, remind her why learning was important, and even offer rewards. Unfortunately, none of those strategies increased her motivation. This situation demonstrates an important point for educators. If we don't understand why motivation has decreased, we may choose strategies that fail to address the real problem. After reflecting on my daughter's situation, I realized her confidence had never changed. Instead, the issue was value. She no longer believed educational activities were worth giving up her free summertime. Once I understood that, I realized the solution wasn't to push harder, but to increase the value she associated with learning. Expectancy value theory doesn't just explain motivation, it also helps us design effective interventions. Instead of assigning learning activities, I involved my daughter in the decision-making process. She helped create her own flexible learning schedule, selected books related to science and engineering, and chose activities that reflected her interests and future goals. These simple changes increased both her interest value and utility value while reducing the perceived cost of learning during summer break. I also provided frequent positive feedback that emphasized her effort and progress. As a result, she gradually became more engaged and willingly participated in educational activities because she now understood their purpose and felt ownership over the learning process. So, how can this theory help you as an educator? First, avoid assuming that a student lacks motivation because they are unwilling to complete a task. Instead, ask yourself whether the student believes they can succeed and whether they understand the value of the activity. Second, provide students with meaningful choices whenever possible. Student ownership increases engagement. Third, connect learning to students' interests, future goals, or real-world experiences. When students recognize how learning relates to their own lives, they are more likely to remain motivated. Finally, use positive feedback to build confidence while recognizing progress rather than focusing only on final outcomes. Another theory to be used when motivating students is the goal orientation, or GO, theory. The goal orientation, GO, theory suggests that individuals approach achievement with different types of goals that influence their motivation, effort, and persistence. Jones 2015. The theory also suggests that personal beliefs about ability influence goal orientation. Individuals with a growth mindset believe abilities can improve through effort. Alternatively, those with a fixed mindset, entity theory, believe abilities are relatively stable and difficult to change. The common misconception is goal orientation is just goal setting. According to Dweck, 1992, goal setting is a specific outcome that is to be achieved. Goal orientation is the reason why people engage in a task. Jones 2015. These reasons could include their desire to prove competence to others or to develop competence for themselves. The GO theory can be broken down into 4 parts like the quadrants on the screen. Performance approach, goals focused on proving competence to others. Performance avoidance, avoiding demonstrating competence to others. Mastery approach, students focused on developing competence for themselves. Mastery avoidance, students focused on avoiding misunderstanding or not learning a specific task. As educators, we may see students avoid situations that highlight their perceived shortcomings. This is an example of performance avoidance as described by the goal orientation theory. Recognizing this distinction fosters a more compassionate and understanding view of human behavior, emphasizing that low effort does not inherently signify laziness. Knowing about the goal orientation theory as an educator is valuable, but knowing about it as a parent is invaluable. My twin daughters recently graduated from high school. One has received multiple college acceptance letters and the other did not apply out of fear of rejection. In this case, one daughter was not lazy or complacent, she appeared to demonstrate a performance avoidance orientation. Because she consistently compared herself to her sister, she often focused on avoiding situations that might highlight her perceived shortcomings. Instead of pursuing opportunities to grow, she withdrew from goal-setting activities to avoid feelings of failure. I needed to find a way to move her from comparison-based performance goals toward mastery goals centered on personal growth and self-discovery. Applying strategies that align with the goal orientation theory proved to be beneficial in our family. According to Cheng, it is revealed that there are several benefits associated with adopting the mastery goal approach. Learners can become self-confident and gain satisfaction with learning tasks. I began having one-on-one conversations with my daughter that were less about her plans and more about her interests. I also met her negative self-talk with open-minded counter-conversations that reinforced a positive mindset. I often used the power of yet motto as a way to redirect her mind frame so that she pursued life with an open mind instead of a fixed mindset. Although mastery-oriented interventions require time and cannot immediately eliminate years of comparison-based thinking, it can be the step needed to pave the way for self-motivation. Applying the goal orientation theory personally reinforced the importance of understanding students' motivational orientations in the classroom. Not all students are motivated by competition. Many benefit more from opportunities for personal growth and mastery alone. Keep these things in mind when trying to motivate a student to reach their potential. Encourage a growth mindset, praise effort over outcomes, reduce unhealthy competition or comparisons, and set achievable goals. Motivation grows when students focus on becoming better, not simply being better than others. Throughout this presentation, we've explored how different motivation theories help us better understand why students think, feel, and learn the way they do. Our final theory brings these ideas together by looking at what learners believe after they experience success or failure. When students encounter a setback, they don't just move on, they try to make sense of what happened. Those explanations can either motivate them to keep trying or convince them to give up. Our final motivation theory is Wiener's causal attribution theory. This theory focuses on how people explain the reasons behind their successes and failures and how those explanations influence future motivation. Think about a student who receives a low grade on a test. One student might think, "I'm just not good at math," while another might think, "I didn't study enough this time." Even though both students had the same outcome, the explanation they give themselves can lead to very different responses moving forward. According to Yang and Montgomery, 2011, people are scientists trying to understand themselves and the environment and base their future behaviors on the knowledge derived from the causal attributions of their past performance. In other words, after every success or setback, people naturally try to figure out why it happened, and those explanations often determine whether they keep trying or give up. As educators, understanding these attribution patterns can help us recognize how students interpret their experiences and how we can support them in developing more productive, growth-oriented ways of thinking. After students experience success or failure, they naturally ask themselves, "Why did this happen?" According to Wiener, their answer usually falls into three areas. The first is locus, which is simply where students believe the cause came from. Do they see it as something within themselves, like their effort, or something outside of themselves, like the difficulty of the task? Next is stability. Students decide whether they think the cause is permanent or temporary. If they believe, I'm just not good at this, they're likely to expect the same result next time. But if they think, I didn't prepare enough, they recognize that the outcome can change. Finally, there's controllability. Students ask whether the cause is something they can influence. Effort, practice, and study habits are things they can control, while unexpected illness or bad luck are not. These beliefs matter because they influence what students do next. Students who believe their success is connected to causes they can change are much more likely to stay motivated and keep trying. Now let's look at why these three dimensions are so important. Imagine two students who both fail the same math test. The outcome is exactly the same, but the way each student explains it is completely different. The first student thinks, I'm just not good at math. They believe the problem is something about themselves that probably isn't going to change, and they don't feel like there's much they can do about it. After thinking that way, it's easy to see why they might lose confidence, stop participating, or give up when things get difficult. Now think about another student who says, I didn't study enough this time. They still take responsibility for the outcome, but they also recognize that it's something they can change. Instead of giving up, they're more likely to adjust their study habits, ask for help, and try again the next time. The difference isn't the test score, it's the explanation. According to Wiener's causal attribution theory, the way students explain success and failure has a powerful impact on what they do next. As educators, we may not be able to prevent every setback our students experience, but we can help them see those setbacks as opportunities to learn rather than evidence that they can't succeed. That shift in thinking can make all the difference in whether a student gives up or keeps going. To show how causal attribution theory applies in a real-life situation, I'd like to share an experience involving my son, who is a competitive student-athlete. After one tournament, his team lost every game they played. While everyone on the team was disappointed, he took the losses especially hard. On the 2.5-hour drive home, he replayed mistake after mistake, focusing on individual plays and everything he believed he had done wrong. One play in particular stayed with him because the ball hit his stick and bounced into the goal for the opposing team. Even though lacrosse is a team sport and many factors contributed to the outcome, he placed much of the responsibility on himself. As his mom, I saw the weekend very differently. I saw the defensive stops he made, the effort he gave every game, and the situations that were completely outside of his control. But he couldn't see those things. He was focused only on his mistakes. At that moment, I realized this wasn't just about losing games. It was about how he was interpreting the experience. That made me ask an important question. How could I help him shift from self-blame to seeing the tournament as an opportunity to learn and improve? That's where causal attribution theory became such a valuable framework. When I stepped back and looked at the situation through the lens of causal attribution theory, I realized exactly what was happening. First, his attribution was internal. He wasn't blaming the weather, the officials, or his teammates. He believed the losses were his fault. Second, he was beginning to see the situation as stable. Instead of viewing it as one difficult tournament, he started questioning his ability as a player. Finally, I wanted to shift his thinking toward controllability. We couldn't change the tournament results, but we could focus on the things he could improve, including communication, footwork, ground balls, and defensive positioning. Those were areas his coaches had already identified as important, and they became the focus of our conversations moving forward. Once I recognized how he was interpreting the tournament, my goal wasn't to convince him that he hadn't made mistakes. Instead, I wanted to help him look at those mistakes differently. Over the next several days, we talked about the tournament many times. Rather than focusing only on the final scores, we talked through specific plays and situations. Sometimes we discussed things he could have done differently, but we also talked about the positive plays he was overlooking. We even watched film from the games together. As we paused throughout the film, our conversations shifted away from simply asking, "What went wrong?" to asking, "What can you learn from this?" Together, we identified several controllable areas to continue improving, including communication, footwork, defensive positioning, and ground balls. Instead of dwelling on the losses, we created a plan for the next tournament. Although this experience involved my son as a student athlete, it reminded me of something we see in classrooms every day. When students get a disappointing grade, struggle with an assignment, or make a mistake while learning something new, their first reaction is often to focus on what went wrong. Many start thinking they're just not good at something, when in reality they're still learning. I saw that same pattern after the tournament. As educators, we can't prevent every setback our students will face. What we can do is help them make sense of those setbacks. By listening first, asking questions that encourage reflection, and helping students focus on the things they can control, like their effort, the strategies they use, and how they prepare, we can help them see mistakes as opportunities to grow instead of reasons to give up. Whether a student is learning to read, solving a challenging math problem, or trying something completely new, the goal is the same. We want them to understand that one difficult moment doesn't define who they are or what they're capable of. When we help students change the way they think about setbacks, we're also helping them build confidence, resilience, and the motivation to keep trying. As we've seen throughout this presentation, there isn't just one way to understand motivation. Each of these theories gives us a different perspective, but they all point to the same idea. The way students think about themselves, their goals, and their challenges plays a powerful role in how they learn. As educators, we have the opportunity to influence those beliefs every day. By creating supportive learning environments, helping students set meaningful goals, and encouraging them to see challenges as opportunities to learn, we can help build their confidence and keep them motivated. At the end of the day, motivation isn't about making sure students never struggle. It's about helping them develop the confidence, resilience, and perseverance to keep going when they do.